All right, welcome to the Game or Die podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Moore, and today is a very special day. Today is September 10th, 2021, and it's my birthday. So I'm spending the morning of my birthday recording a podcast because I want to talk about video games. I love video games, and it's my main hobby. It's the thing that I spend probably most of my free time doing, or at least thinking about. I have this website to talk, or this podcast to talk about video games. I have a website to write reviews about video games. I love talking about video games. So, I am just wanting to do this because it's been several weeks since I did the last episode, and I played a couple of games to completion that I want to talk about. One of the main games that I want to talk about is Psychonauts 2. If you know me at all, Psychonauts is my favorite game of all time. I think it's just super creative and interesting. I got my wife to start playing it when we first started dating, and she fell in love with the game. And we also backed the Psychonauts 2 announcement, and we actually gave money. So we both got these copies of this game, even though uh, even though Microsoft actually bought the development studio Double Fine, and it's now on Game Pass technically for free if you have Game Pass, but it doesn't matter. I'm so happy that game finally came out. It's been 16 years since the original, so I'm stinking happy that game finally got a sequel, and I was more than happy to fund the original development costs for it, even though, like I said, they got bought by Microsoft later on. But there's also another game that I kind of want to talk about, and the reason why is because this game, it's called 12 Minutes, and I actually wrote a review for it because it had a really interesting premise. When it first came out, people were really talking about it, and it was on Game Pass, so it did not cost me anything to actually play this game. And I was so intrigued that I wanted to see the end of it. And by the end, oh my gosh, the wheels fell off of that thing. So I want to talk a little bit about 12 Minutes. So 12 Minutes is basically a time loop game. And if you don't know about time loop games, think about movies like Groundhog Day and Looper and the new one with Andy Samberg, Palm Springs, where you kind of relive the same day over and over and over again. That's the same premise of this game. And time loop games have kind of gone up in popularity over the last several years. The first one that I can remember playing was Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, which I also replayed semi-recently within the last several years. And I actually wrote a review for it too. I really dislike that game. I hate that game. It's some people's favorite games, which baffles my mind when it comes to the Zelda series. I would put that at the bottom of my list of Zelda games. I think it's a truly awful game, but that's okay. If other people like it, that's fine. But there's also been a big boom of these time loop games coming out. A couple years ago, there was The Outer Wilds that came out in 2019, and that it also does the same thing where you relive a certain amount of minutes over and over and over again. So like about 20 minutes of gameplay, I think it's 22 minutes of gameplay, and then you restart the game from the very beginning. You retain the knowledge of what you're doing throughout the gameplay experience, so you can kind of move a little bit faster each and every loop, basically. There's another game coming out in just a few days called Deathloop as well, and I'm kind of interested in it, but I'm being a little bit more reserved, especially with how 12 Minutes turned out. So let's talk about this game so I never have to talk about it or think about it ever again. 12 Minutes is a game, it's an indie game that came out on Game Pass, and that's mainly the reason why I, continued with it and finished the game. Everyone was talking about this game, and I remember seeing this game back about 6-7 years ago. The developer came to Giant Bomb, and they showed off the game in one of their, their quick looks for game developers, where the game developer actually came on and talked about their game. So it was kind of like a promotional piece, and it was in a very, very basic state, but the main premise was still there. You are this character and you're reliving the last 12 minutes over and over and over and over again. That's the entire game. And that's what the main game actually turned out to be as well. So let's kind of dive into what 12 minutes really is. You play as this character who is a husband, and you walk through the apartment. And you are greeted by your wife. Your wife greets you and says, "Hey, I got a special surprise, and I've also made a really nice dessert. So let me know when you're ready. We'll sit down and have dessert, and I'll give you your surprise." And within this 12 minutes, a bunch of stuff can happen. One of the main things that happens is that your apartment gets broken into by this quote unquote cop. This cop comes in, says, "Hey, get on the ground. I'm putting you in handcuffs." And the wife is being arrested for murder. And you're freaking out the entire time. The wife's freaking out the entire time. The cop's shouting, the entire time. So it's a very chaotic environment. And honestly, it's a little bit intense. Like, realistically thinking, what if someone just barged in and tied me up and accused my wife of murder? That's a pretty intense thing. So all of this stuff is going on. And when that 12 minutes it shows up and you reach that 12-minute mark, the game starts over again. And you just bumble back into your apartment and you're freaking out going, what the heck happened? And then you realize, oh, the game is starting over again. I'm reliving this 12 minutes over and over and over again. So just like with the Outer Wilds, you are using that gained knowledge to progress the story further and further with every gameplay loop. Now, that actually sounds pretty interesting, and that's what originally got me to play the game. Like I said, it was on Game Pass, so it was for free, and I didn't really mind playing this game, and it didn't cost me anything, so I was willing to see it to the end. Unfortunately, everything about the game itself is kind of baffling. Now, the art style is very minimalistic. There's only a very small portion of the game. You are confined to your little tiny apartment with one bathroom and one bedroom and a main living area. So the main living area has kind of a couch and a table like for eating, and then a kitchen area. And then you have the bathroom, and then also the secondary or the one bedroom as well, with a little closet as well too. So I'm going to spoil the crap out of this game because I want to make sure everyone knows what the game is so that they don't make the same mistake of playing it. It took me about 6-ish hours to complete the game from beginning to end, and there's a couple different types of endings to the game as well. And I actually wrote a review, so if you want kind of a more in-depth view of what the game really is going for and the endings for it and how confusing it is, go and read that on the gameordie.net website. But here's the thing with Game or Die, or the thing with 12 minutes. 12 minutes is a baffling story that doesn't make sense. You walk into your apartment, you have the intruder come in, and he says he's a cop, he ties you up, and you can try and get out of it. The whole gameplay is actually a top-down perspective, which is actually pretty interesting. And like I said, it's a very minimalistic art style as well. The characters don't have faces, they don't have any recognizable features. You're viewing it from the top down, like the ceiling of the apartment, and you're controlling the character, the husband. The cop bursts in, says you're wanted for murder, and if you actually try and struggle free, the cop will knock you out and start the gameplay over again, that 12 minutes over again. The next time you can walk through the apartment a little bit more and kind of inspect some weird stuff. You can go into the closet and pull out a phone from your wife's purse, so you actually see your wife's phone, and you can scroll through it, and you can actually see that your texts are saved on the phone. So the wife will basically say like, "Oh, hey, honey, how's your day at work going?" And you see your reply saying, "Oh, hey, it's going good. I'm sorry you weren't feeling well this morning. It seems like you were throwing up. That sucks." Stuff like that. So you gain information throughout all the things that you pick up. You have an inventory. It's kind of like a point and click adventure game in a way, which is kind of interesting because there's not that many games that still do that anymore. So I did like that aspect. You can go into the bathroom and shut the door and kind of fiddle around with the medicine cabinet, and you can actually find sleeping pills. You can walk through the kitchen area and find some cups and use some cups to drink, to fill. Sorry, you can use the cups to get filled up with water in the sink, and you can use those cups to offer your wife a drink, or you can use the cup filled with water to go fill a potted plant in the bedroom, things like that. It's actually pretty interesting. Where it all falls apart is the actual story itself. So the cop bursts in, accuses your wife of murder. You struggle, you get beat up, and you get knocked out, and you start the gameplay over again. The next time you do that, you can actually mess around with some few more things and get some information. You're freaking out, and you're basically telling your wife, I'm in a time loop. And you have to explain to her and prove that you're in a time loop. So the wife doesn't believe you at first and says, yeah, no, whatever. Yeah, nice try. And you go, no, no, I really mean it. And you use some clues depending on how many times you start the gameplay over again and pick up on certain things. So you'll say, hey, a cop is going to burst in here in 3 minutes and he's going to accuse you for murder. And that happens, and she's freaking out. You can do another loop where you say, okay, well, I know the sky is totally clear right now, but in 3 minutes, the thunder is going to happen, and then a cop is going to burst in the door and accuse you for murder. She's like, yeah, whatever. And every single time you start the gameplay over again, you can use more and more clues to prove that you're in a time loop. At a certain point, you can just use that dialogue of saying, this happens, this happens, this happens, and it all happens, and the wife believes you. Or you can kind of mess around with what happens. You can dodge the wife at the very beginning, and you can hide in the closet, and that will advance time. And when the time advances, the cop will burst in, and the wife technically thinks she's alone. She doesn't know that you're hiding in the closet the entire time because she never greeted you at the very beginning. So you're hiding in the closet, and you can actually watch the cop kind of do a different thing when he arrests the wife. He starts asking questions. Hey, where's the watch? And she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And kind of kicks her a few times in the stomach and beats her up. And now you have the knowledge also something else is going on too. I won't spoil it just yet. So you watch the cop beat up on your wife, and she admits, okay, the watch is hidden in the bathroom apartment. It is hidden in the air vent. And so he goes and gets the watch from the air vent, and then before she gives more information away, the time loop starts over again. So it's kind of like this weird like mystery that's kind of unraveling. And the more that you go deeper into the progression of the time loops, each time you restart time, you get a little bit more information. So there's this breadcrumb trail, this fascination of unraveling this mystery and pulling you in deeper and deeper every single time. The issue is that it takes the exact amount of time every single time. You can't like save your progress. You just have to go through the motions every single time. And it gets really, really boring at some point. And just like, oh my gosh, I have to sit here and literally just wait out the clock for the time to loop over again. You can just walk out of the apartment and it will restart the time over again as well. But to progress the story, you have to go through the same boring, convoluted dialogue options every single time. And it just gets monotonous and it gets boring. Having the same conversation of proving you're in a time loop with your wife, having the same conversation with the cop every single time, it just, or waiting in the hallway closet. it just gets exhausting after a while. So that was one of my big issues with the game, is just it took too long to get interesting. And if you try and experiment a little bit, it takes too much time. One example is, like I said earlier, you can get some mugs and fill the mugs up with water. And you can go into the bathroom and find sleeping pills. So, guess what? You can add the sleeping pills to the mug filled with water and give it to your wife and basically drug her, which is one of the ways that you actually progress the story. So, you find out about the watch, you talk to your wife about the watch, you talk to your wife about this accused murder of her father. Sorry, I believe I didn't even say that. Yeah, she's accused for murdering her father. And as you go through the time loops, certain extra things happen, certain little pieces of information get exposed every single time, and you use that in the conversations with your wife. So the cop busts in and says, hey, you've been accused for murdering your father. You find out that the father actually didn't die. And she actually tried to kill her father because it was an act of, self-preservation. It was an act of, protecting herself. Her father beat her up. She got a hold of a gun. She thought he was going to kill her, so she shot first. He got shot and it wounded him on Christmas Eve. Well, unfortunately, he didn't die. And so the wife fled to New York City. I believe this is all taking place in New York, which is several hundred miles away from where the father was when he got shot. And the cop finds the father and then also finds the guy. See, again, I'm already getting confused. This was several weeks ago that I played this, and the story is just so convoluted. Oh my gosh, it's ridiculous. The cop accuses the wife of murdering her father, to find out that she was in New York the day he actually died, which was on New Year's Eve. So, a week apart. The father got shot on Christmas, and then he got shot on New Year's and actually died. So there's a second gunman here in play. The wife is in New York City on New Year's Eve, which is when the shooter actually kills the father. Oh, I'm just kind of skip ahead a little bit here. You can drug your wife so she falls asleep. You can hide in the closet to waste time so that when the cop bursts in, he doesn't notice anyone in the main apartment. He starts and looks around the apartment and finds your wife passed out. Well, you can mess around with the light switch in the bedroom. It's kind of like faulty, so if you flip it on once, you actually get shocked. But if you turn it off and flip it on again, you get electrocuted. And if you get electrocuted and you are the one doing it, you will restart the time loop of 12 minutes. So if you drug your wife, turn the light on, turn the light off, now it's primed and ready to electrocute someone. So when the cop comes in and you're hiding in the closet, and he comes in and goes, where is everyone? He looks over, the door is open to the bedroom. He goes, oh my gosh, someone's in the bed. Are they murdered or are they passed out? He turns on the light switch to turn the lights on, and he is the one that gets electrocuted, which now gives you the opportunity to go to the cop who's on the ground, electrocuted and passed out, to search him. He's got a gun, he's got a couple handcuffs, he's got a phone, and now you can tie him up and interrogate him. Now the tables are reversed. So as you progress through multiple time loops of this happening every single time, you get a little bit more and more information. You learn what's going on with the cop. The cop is a father of a girl. This daughter of the cop is dying of cancer. You're scrolling through the text and all this stuff. Now you have a little bit more information of why he wants the watch. He wants the watch to sell the watch so that he can pay for his daughter's cancer treatments. You can talk to the cop, and the cop is basically like, let me go right now, let me go right now, let me go right now. He's not going to listen to you. So you can talk to him and basically say, look, I know about your daughter, because again, the time loops are allowing you to use the phone as more information. You use that information on every single time loop to talk to the cop a little bit more. He's like, shut your mouth. You're not allowed to talk about my daughter. Don't you say another word. I'm going to kill you now. You're in way too deep. You don't know what you're doing. And then every single time loop allows you to progress the conversation a little bit further. Finally, you get enough information. You get enough information from the cops talking about how the wife killed the dad, and the dad is actually alive. And then the wife actually shot him on Christmas, and he was found on New Year's Eve. The wife was in New York on New Year's Eve because you have a photo on the fridge to prove it, and so on and so forth. So what happens eventually is that you use the phone to call the daughter of the cop who's sick with cancer and say, look, your dad is about to bust into my apartment, accuse my wife of murder, and she didn't do it. She's innocent. Your dad is going to really hurt us. Please talk to him. This all happens before he gets to the apartment in the gameplay loop. So you hear him entering or getting out of the elevator and walking into the apartment. Right before he gets to the apartment, the daughter calls him and says, Dad, some people called me. And he's like, oh, you know what? That must have been a prank phone call. She's like, no, they said that you're about to enter their apartment and you're going to hurt them. He's like, I don't know who told you that, but I promise I'm not going to hurt anyone. So you hear him have this conversation with the daughter. He hangs up and he knocks on the phone and says, hey, I don't know what's going on, but we need to talk. And so he walks in, you let him in instead of him kind of bursting in. You let him in and say, look, I know you're about to arrest my wife for murder. She did not murder her father. Yes, she shot him, but that was on Christmas, and he was found dead on New Year's Eve, shot. So let's talk. And so you finally basically sit down and talk with this cop, and have a couple conversations, a couple time loops every single time this happens. And you basically start unraveling more and more of the mystery. So here is the big, big, big ending of 12 minutes in the spoiler portion. So try and skip a little bit past if you don't want spoilers. But honestly, it's better just to hear the story because it doesn't make sense. If you play it, you're just going to be pissed off and mad. The cop is basically finding out that there was a brother involved with the mistress of the dad. The dad had a kid, which is this woman that you're married to, the wife. And the mother finds out that the dad had a affair with the maid. The maid had a son, and so your wife has a brother, or a technical bastard stepchild with the father. Now, this is where it gets stupid. You find out that the brother was still, around the house. The mother died, and the father, kept both children, but he kept the brother locked away and was a secret until right now. The brother is the one who shoots the dad. The dad dies on New Year's Eve. So he's dead. And the brother is actually the husband, and the wife is actually the sister. So you have some stupid, weird incest story that's super gross. It's dumb and it doesn't explain anything. Also, the dad is also the cop. How do you know this? Because there's only 3 characters in the game, technically. There's also the daughter of the cop who is dying from cancer, is a little girl who's named Bumblebee. It's like his pet name for her. And there's 3 main voice actors. The cop is voiced by Willem Dafoe, which is super cool. The husband, the character that you play, is voiced by James McAvoy, so Professor X in the newer X-Men movies. And the wife is played by Daisy Ridley, or Rey from the Star Wars new prequels, or sequels, sorry. So you have three characters. The husband and the wife. Husband, James McAvoy. Wife, Daisy Ridley. The sister is also the wife, which is Daisy Ridley. And the husband is also played by the father, the husband is also played by the brother, which is James McAvoy. The cop is also playing the father, and the father and the cop are also voiced by the same actor, which is Willem Dafoe. The brother is in love with the sister, so he marries the sister. They become husband and wife. The wife shot her father, who is also the cop, because they're both played by Willem Dafoe, and the cop shows up, but he's also shot and dead, and no one recognizes each other. So you start kind of getting weird visions and things like this, and the time dilation, space, matter kind of reloops over and over again, to the point where you finally unlock the kind of ending, which is where you are sitting down with the father character, who is Willem Dafoe, who's also voicing the cop, and the cop is walking back and forth. The father is walking back and forth, kind of saying, "You're in love with your sister and it's gross, stop it." And you're like, "I love her anyways." And then they basically just kind of reloop over and over again, to the point where stuff doesn't make sense. And you can basically have a choice at the very end. You have a choice to either continue loving your sister, or you have a choice to leave her. And this is all happening in the past, apparently, because the cop father dies by getting knocked on the head, and then you wrestle and shoot him in the stomach. But the cop still shows up at the house, and no one knows who he is, and is unrecognizable. But he's also the father, so he's dead, and the wife doesn't know this, but she knows that she shot her dad, and she thought she murdered him, but she technically didn't. Oh my gosh, I feel sick to my stomach, and my brain hurts right now just trying to explain this stupid, convoluted story. So that is basically the end, too, is you learn that your wife is your sister, and the dad did die, but not by her hands, but by your hands, but you don't remember it. But the cop is your father, and he's still alive. And no one recognizes each other, and it's just the stupidest, crappiest story. I've seen people go, well, he's hypnotized, and he's basically regressing into his memory, so that's why no one sees each other. But it still doesn't make sense, and the game never actually tells you any of this. The game never tells you that you're recessed in your mind and you're reverting to previous times where you were happy and you made this whole imaginary world for yourself. The game doesn't tell you that, and so people are just projecting their own, like, he's clearly in his mind having these delusions. No, the game is about incest, and the game is about you killing your father and brother, and being married to your sister wife, and your cop dad you killed because your brother husband, and that's it. That's the story. The story is you married your sister, and also, I don't even think I said this, the whole surprise that your sister wife is giving you a nice dessert for is because she's pregnant. So you impregnated your... Oh, dude, it just sucks. Come on. Don't buy this trash. Don't play this trash. It freaking sucks. It is not an interesting payoff. The story does not make sense. The gameplay is way overblown for what it is. The game is longer than what it should be, and it should not have taken 7 years to make this game. I don't know why they got A-list Hollywood actors to play these roles, because there's not that much dialogue in it. And I'm sure they could have hired lesser known voice actors who would have done a better performance. Not saying the voice acting is bad, but the voice acting sometimes does not match up to what the emotion is actually being conveyed in the scene. So some audio clips just don't make sense. Sometimes, like, you're like, I'm in a time loop, and she's like, no, no, you can't mean that. No, 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 no. Like, and freaking out. And sometimes, like, it's a totally calm, read on the situation when it's a very serious matter. You murdered your father. Yeah, no, I don't believe you. Like, what? No, you're being held hostage, and the audio does not match what's happening on screen. So, oh my gosh, this game freaking sucks, and I was really mad that that was the payoff, because I actually had a really fun time with it. The first about 45 minutes or so, or about an hour, I played by myself. And my wife went to bed, and she woke up in the middle of me playing this, and was like, what are you playing? Like, she came out to get a glass of water. She's like, what are you playing? I'm like, oh, I'm playing this weird time loop game. It's called 12 Minutes, and I'm basically trying to find out why this cop is bursting into the apartment and accusing my wife of murder. And she's like, oh, that sounds interesting. All right, I'm gonna go back to bed. I love you. And then the next day, I talked to her about it more, and she's like, you know what? That sounds interesting. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to continue playing. I kind of got in a weird situation where I kind of stuck. And dude, my wife is awesome. She is really good at solving puzzles. So she's like, I'm going to sit down and play this with you, and maybe I can help you out. So we played it together, and she's telling me, oh, you should do this. Oh, you should do that. And she is helping me progress the story further and further. And so we sat down and played a couple hours of it together. And then she flew off to California, and I was stuck at home, babysitting all of our animals. I don't even think I talked about this on the last podcast, but we now have 2 ducks, which are super fun. And we have 10 chickens. Actually, we have 9. One of them unfortunately got eaten by the neighbor's dog, which is super sad and a bummer. But we have 9 chickens, 2 ducks, and 3 cats and 2 dogs. And so she flew off, and I had to take care of all the animals, our little farm. And I wanted to finish up the game, so I did finish up the game without her, and it was definitely a big bummer, because I would have loved to seen her reaction as all this stupid crap unfolds. But I had a really fun time playing the first, I'd say, half of the game, roughly. Maybe a little bit less, maybe about 40% of the game. The first 40% is actually pretty interesting. But because of where it ends up, because of how much slogging through the same dialogue options you have to do, and you basically have to just have a note pad to kind of make the connections, so that to not waste your time as much, what options you need to talk to your wife about, so that you don't waste your time and you don't go off, filling up the glass of water and drugging her when it's not necessary, or you shouldn't have done that, because if you do, you are wasting a full time loop, and you have to restart from the beginning of the 12 minutes, and it's just wasting time. So, oh, my stomach hurts talking about that game, because it sucks so much, and it really is sickening. I hate the fact that it turned into some gross incest story. Like, who is thinking of this? Who is writing these stories and going, yeah, this is a good story to tell? Like, I impregnated my sister. Like, come on, you freaking sicko. Ugh. I hope I never have to talk about or think about that game ever again. It's definitely not going to be in my top 10 games of what I played this year, even though there's not that many games that I played that came out this year. There's just not a lot of games coming out this year, which is a big, big, big bummer. But let's change it to a much more happier subject. A game that did come out this year, came out just a couple weeks ago, actually. Psychonauts 2. Oh, I'm so happy this game came out. Finally. So, Psychonauts is my favorite game of all time. And the reason why is because there's no other games like it. You think of a video game, you think of Call of Duty type first person shooters, or you think of puzzle games like Tetris, or you think of racing games like, San Francisco Rush or Forza. You think of all these different types of genres in games, but when you think about platforming games, you think about Mario. Straightforward platforming games where the challenge is to get up, and not die. Get up to this platform and go to that platform without falling down. Psychonauts is such a interesting and unique take on that type of genre of video game that it's always been the one that I go to saying, dude, if you want to see what video games really are in like the best example of a interesting and unique and awesome way that video games do something different with art than nothing else in it can, like a painting can't do this, a movie can't do this. Video games are such a wonderful example of something interesting and new. Psychonauts is that best example. I always talk about and think back to levels like Black Velvet Topia, where everything's that black velvet crushed painting style, where everything's like in black lights and neon colors. And you just don't see that type of art style in video games, let alone a full level like it, where it just plays on the depth perception and the different colors and height in depth and all that type of stuff. It is so unique. Another one is, and the standout one, the one that is always the first in my mind when I think about Psychonauts, is the Milkman level, where the world twists and turns and bends in ways that it shouldn't. And when you're walking forward and you're walking, the curvature of the street is going upside down and sideways, and the gravity is still applying to the path that you're walking on, the floor beneath your feet. But technically, if you look over to the left, the path is turned upside down, and so now you're right side up, but the path is upside down. But if you walk backwards, now you're right side up still, and the path that you were just on is now upside down. It's crazy. It is so cool. And Tim Schafer, the writer of this series and the owner of Double Fine, I think makes just some of the best and not only unique and interesting, but also funny video games. Genuinely funny video games. A lot of people say, oh, video game comedy is so hard to write. I don't think it is. I think you just need to be a funny person. You can write good comedy for video games if you're funny. Tim Schafer is a prime example of that. So if you don't know the concept of Psychonauts, what Psychonauts really is a 3D platformer where you are this kid at a psychic summer camp. And as you progress through the game, you find out that weird stuff are happening and you can go into people's minds, and each mind is the level of the game. So you have a hub world and you have the levels within each character's mind. Most of those characters are like camp counselors and things like that. And you go into their minds, and each mind is totally unique and different. You go into the very first character's mind, which is your Army Sergeant Camp Counselor, who kind of gives you basic training, which is called basic braining. And you go into the mind of the character, the camp counselor, who's an army general, and his whole mind is army themed. So you're jumping out of planes and skydiving and landing in, and there's trenches and bullets and terminals and bombs dropping, and it's like a war zone. And that's that first level. Then you go to the next level and the next level, and each level is different. Like I said, you find this security guard who's basically thinking he's a milkman, and he's thinking that there's conspiracies going on all around him. So he's in this idyllic like 1950s suburb, and there's these characters in black vans and black sunglasses, G-men, basically government men, uh so is secret security, like following his every move and on walkie talkies and talking in code. And oh man, it's just so unique. So that came out in 2005, and right at kind of the changeover from Xbox to Xbox 360. It was one of the last Xbox games, and man, that game was so cool. And I told everyone about it. When I had my game store, I would actually talk to people, and they would say, "What is a game that you recommend?" And I would just jump at the chance to tell them about Psychonauts, because I was like, dude, if you do you like like, do you like platformers? Are you like a creative person? Do you like something unique and totally different? Play Psychonauts. And so I would get so many people to play Psychonauts just off of recommendations of telling them about, like I said, the Milkman security level, or this security guys level, basic branding with the Army Sergeant, or Black Velvet Topia, where it looks like a black velvet painting. Like, man, it is just so cool. So several years ago, at the Game Awards, Tim Schafer came up and said, "Hey, we did the Double Fine Adventure game, which was on Kickstarter, and that did really good. And it helped us, prove like, hey, people want these older types of games. We want to make a sequel to Psychonauts, because Psychonauts actually ended on a cliffhanger, and they never did anything with it. And it was always a bummer. I hate games that end on cliffhangers but don't deliver the actual next game. Like, don't make your first game a cliffhanger. Like, wrap it up properly." So Psychonauts ended on a cliffhanger. They came out in 2016 and said, "Hey, we want to do another type of Kickstarter on Fig, which is like their own version of Kickstarter. So we want you to fund the development for Psychonauts 2." And I jumped at the chance, and I was dating my wife at the time, and she said, "Oh, that game, yeah, we gotta fund that game." So she bought a copy, and I bought a copy, so we both helped fund that game. And the game was originally going to be developed for with a budget of $3 million. And if you know about game budgets and stuff like that, that's not a whole lot of money at all. 3 million might seem like a lot, but especially now in today's, economy and stuff like that, 3 million's a drop in the bucket for a game development, especially for a large studio. So a year went by and we get some updates, and then another year went by and we get a little bit more updates, and another year went by, and it's like, "Okay, is this game coming out anytime soon?" And it was like, "Yeah, it'll come out at the end of this year." Okay, the end of this year is now here, and we're still not ready, so we're gonna push it back. We're gonna delay it. Okay, it'll come out next year. Okay, this next year and still not out. Come out next year, and it just felt like the game kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed. All the while, I'm just going, more delays are good. More delays are pretty good, because this company has a good track record. They had a couple stumbles, but they have a pretty good track record of putting the game out finally and in some complete form. And if you're delaying the game, there's a reason for it. And I'd rather have a good Psychonauts 2 than a crappy, rushed, thrown out the door version of Psychonauts 2. So the day finally arrived a couple weeks ago in 2021. Psychonauts 2 finally came out. And my wife and I sat there and we played it, and we played it, and we played it, and we finished it. We actually finished it a couple nights ago with getting all the figments for every level. Every level has, X amount of figments that you can find in the world, which are like little drawings. Also emotional baggage, also a memory vaults, also half a brain collectibles, also another type of memory collectible. Like, just so many different collectibles that you actually have to go back into the levels and scour the levels to find like little hidden things here and there. And I really, really enjoy that in games. I'm a big fan of collectibles in games, as long as there's a point to them. Now, Unfortunately, with Psychonauts 2, if you collect all the figments and all the memory vaults and all the emotional baggage, and you spend all this time scouring the levels for all these things, there is no real main payoff, which is a bummer. There technically is, but I don't think it's worth it at all. So, Psychonauts 2 continues the story of Raz the Psychonaut, and that in and of itself, I'm kind of a little sad about, because we named our last dog Raz because of our love of Psychonauts. He was a brindled pit bull, American pit bull terrier, and he was brindled, and he was just a wonderful dog. I loved him so much. Unfortunately, he had a lot of health issues, and I actually talked about this on one of the podcasts. We had to put him down because he had seizures. He had seizures so many times. Even the day that we were going to put him down, he had a seizure, and it was just like, dude, he's going to have brain damage and all this stuff, and we don't want to deal with that. So, we named our dog Raz. So, like, I have a deep emotional connection with this character now because he reminds me of my little puppy. And he was a puppy too. He was only about 2 years old when we put him down, which is such a bummer. But man, so Raz is the main character, and he's this kid who has these psychic powers. He comes from a family of circus folk, and he runs away to the psychic summer camp to become a psychonaut and learn how to use his psychic powers. His circus family does not like psychics, because a psychic put a curse on their family that they were all going to die in water. So anytime you get around water, you can't be in water, so you can't swim. You get swallowed up, and you lose some health in the game itself. So Psychonauts 2 kind of continues on that story. Basically, you find out the head of the Psychonauts, which is like this crime-fighting special agency that uses their minds to infiltrate other people's minds and solve crimes and things like that. So Psychonauts have this headquarters. A couple of the council counselors are Psychonaut agents, and you basically help learn that brains of children are being taken. So you solve that crime and you restore a kid's brain at the camp. And then there was this VR version. Not version, but VR game for Psychonauts called the Rhombus of Ruin. And man, it was kind of a weird thing. I'm really glad they made it. I'm just not sure if it should have been for VR only, because it's a VR only game, and people are going to miss out on half of, the connecting story from Psychonauts 1 to Psychonauts 2. Long story short, the girl that you like at summer camp is the daughter of the head of the Psychonauts, and her dad has been taken captive. So you fly off in the plane at the end of the game, and that's where the cliffhanger is. In the VR game, which is I call Psychonauts 1.2 at this point, because it really is. It's a middle connecting game between 1 and 2. So Psychonauts VR, which is called the Rhombus of Ruin, you find the doctor who has taken the head of the Psychonauts, your girlfriend's dad, hostage. You rescue him, and that's all of Psychonauts VR. Psychonauts 2 picks up right in the plane as you're going to the Psychonauts headquarters, and you basically find out that the head of the Psychonauts, your girlfriend's dad, is still really, really having some health issues. So he's kind of like laid out, and she's all worried about him. And the interim director of the head of the Psychonauts, Agent Hollis, is kind of a by the books, no nonsense type of character. And you basically, do the same thing that you did in the original game. It's a 3D platformer. You're rolling around in your little levitation ball and stuff like that. And you're doing acrobatic skills and finding all these collectibles, not just in the hub worlds, but also in the main levels as well. And you're trying to figure out what's going on. I might do a secondary portion of this because this is going just a little bit too long, and I do want to dive deep into this. So I'm going to take a little bit of a break here and come back with a little bit more Psychonauts review for Psychonauts 2, and then call it for the day because I got some stuff I want to do for my birthday. All right, so here's a little bit of break music.
purple, wearing purple. Start wearing purple for me now. All your sanity and wits, they will all vanish, I promise. It's just a matter of time. So yeah, start wearing the purple, wearing the purple. Start wearing the purple for me now. All your sanity and wits, they will all vanish, I promise. It's just a matter of time. I met you when you were at 20 and I was 20, but thought that's all years from now. A purple little lady will be perfect for dirty old and useless clowns. So yeah, start wearing a purple, wearing a purple. Start wearing a purple for me now. All your sanity and the wits, they will all vanish, I promise. It's just a matter of time. So yeah, I know it all, from Diogenes to the Foucault, from Ложечкин до паспорту. Я клянусь, обоссав два пальца, да, что музыка пошла от звука мов. So yeah, start wearing the purple, wearing the purple. Start wearing the purple for me now. Start wearing the purple for me now. All your sanity and wits, they will all vanish, I promise. It's just a matter of time. Sophia, Violetta, это твоя дама, ты моя. Ах, подайте нам карету, вот эту, а мы поедем к ебеням. So yeah, I start wearing the purple, wearing the purple. Start wearing the purple for me now. All your sanity and wits, they will vanish, I promise. It's just a matter of time.
Okay, so Psychonauts 2, back at it. Um, so the game itself is all about exploration in people's minds. And unfortunately, thinking back on the game, because like I said, my wife and I played this, we completed the game 100%. I'm not just talking about getting all the figments. I'm talking also about getting everything that done in the game that you can do, even in the hub worlds. Now, I'm going to just go bit by bit and try not to over-explain too much or go into too much spoiler territory, because I'm sure I'll talk about Psychonauts 2 at the end of the year for my Game of the Year. But Psychonauts 2 starts out with you basically interrogating the doctor, Dr. Lobato, who is like this dentist character. And he is basically, you're trying to figure out why he took your dad and what's wrong, or sorry, your girlfriend's dad and what's wrong with him, the head of the Psychonauts, Truman. So I'm going to use the name Truman. So you're trying to figure out with Dr. Lobato, you're in his mind and you craft this whole like, agency, and he's employee of the month. You're trying to build up his self-esteem so that you can kind of butter him up to tell you where Truman's who actually kidnapped Truman, because clearly it wasn't this guy. He's low on the totem pole. So who's the big bad? And his whole mind is all about weird dentist stuff. So it's a lot of teeth and mouth and tongues and gums and just scraping. It's just, it's a very stark beginning to the game. Like, you are thrown into some weird mouth horror stuff right away. There's actually like a trigger warning, which I kind of was like, oh my gosh, brother, good grief, everyone's a bunch of pansies now. Like, get over it. But I kind of see why, because it is a little bit gruesome. It is kind of a little bit cringy. You go, oh, I don't want to look at that. That looks terrible. Like, there's this wall of zippers, and the zippers are actually made of teeth and gums. Like, it is horrifying. But uh, so you're in Dr. Lobato. He's the first level, and then you find out like, no, there's something else going on. So let's keep him for interrogation, but let's go to the headquarters. You get to the headquarters, and you show up, and you're a kid, like like a 12-year-old kid. So the acting director, Agent Hollis, is like, well, you helped out with this mission. Thank you very much. I'm going to make you an intern. So you're the intern for the Psychonauts, and you realize there's a couple other kid interns as well. They're a little bit older than you, so they kind of push you around and kind of mess with you and stuff like that. But it is this big hub world that you get to explore, and it's the facility of the Psychonauts, the headquarters. And they have all these little goofy little things that you can do. It's just, I don't even want to talk too much about this game just because I don't want to spoil it for people. It's a brand new game and it's totally worth playing. But I would absolutely say play the first game. Don't play the second game first. There's no reason to. I've seen this a lot lately too, where people are going, oh, should I just jump in and play, God of War 3? Should I play, this game, this sequel to this game? Or should I play the sequel to this game instead of playing the originals? No, play Psychonauts 1 because you will not have any idea of what's going on and have no context in idea of who these characters are, and all those characters are explained and built up in the first game, and then the VR game it's expanded upon even a little bit more, and half of the gags won't make sense if you don't already know the original game. So I always tell people play the original. So Agent Hollis tells you you're an intern, and you basically go on a couple missions, and you find out Agent Hollis has some weird stuff going on in her mind. So you go into her mind, and there's a whole level there of hospitals and casinos. And then as the game progresses, you go, well, the original founding Psychonaut members had this terrible battle with this big bad character called Maligula. And you're thinking Maligula has to be behind the capture of Truman, the real head of the Psychonauts right now. And so you kind of talk to the original founding members of the Psychonauts, and you get them all together, and you fix their brains because they're all battle damaged. They are just out of their minds because of what happened with the Battle of Maligula, who's dead. Not to spoil, I'm not going to spoil anything, but basically all the levels are in the original Psychonaut members' heads for the most part, and you just go through, and I honestly just, I don't want to spoil it for people. I think it's just way too interesting of a game to just talk about fully and completely. But, and there's a lot there to unpack too. There's just like with, not just like, but kind of like 12 minutes where, you have twists in the story. Like there is a twist to the story, a couple different twists that really help you understand the motivation behind the characters of Psychonauts. Not just the original characters, but the characters in this new game too. And there's so many different characters. There's the original 7 members of the Psychonauts. There's the new members of the Psychonauts. There's the new interns as well. And also there's the inclusion of your circus family. There are like, I'm going to say at least 30 characters in this game that you talk with on a fairly regular basis and are a big chunk of the story. So there is just too much to unpack in a small podcast. And like I said, I don't want to dive into every single thing right now because I do want to talk about it at the game of the year too, because I'll remember all this stuff and kind of like to expand upon it. So Psychonauts, I just want to say if you are playing video games at all, do yourself a favor and play the original Psychonauts. It's kind of on everything right now. I know it's on Game Pass. I know it's on PC, and they give away copies. Honestly, like, man, if you don't have a copy of Psychonauts, I will give you one because I actually have a couple. I'll totally give away a copy of Psychonauts if someone emails me. Um, you can email me at ryan@gameordie.net. Email me, and if I have a copy available for Psychonauts, I will totally send you one. But Psychonauts is just, it's my favorite game of all time, and they made a sequel to it, and my wife is in love with the game too. We named our dog Raz after the main character. You can tell how much that game means to me. And I'm not going to go out and get like a tattoo. I'm not one of those crazy people, but I will say it's my favorite game of all time. And I think that means something because it's not a throwaway game like Call of Duty. You know, it's not an annual franchise. It's not an all-in-one inclusive game that everyone says. Whenever someone came into the store, my video game store back in 2010, 2011, I would always have conversations with people, and I would always say, "What's your favorite game?" And I would get a lot of the same games from so many different people. Oh, if they were kind of a millennial and they grew up with a Nintendo 64, GoldenEye 007 was their favorite game of all time. If they grew up with the original PlayStation, Metal Gear Solid. If they grew up, if they were younger, Call of Duty, whatever the Call of Duty that year was, basically. You know, I would hear the same certain games, even, you know, if they were roughly around my age, they would all say, "Oh, my favorite game is Final Fantasy VII." I'm just like, man, come on, get a less generic answer. Like, I want to hear something unique. And I think when I say my favorite game is Psychonauts, I think that's really unique. Now, because Double Fine is owned by Microsoft and Psychonauts 2 is on Game Pass for free if you are subscribed to that subscription model, and it's one of the biggest games this year, I think Psychonauts is going to get a lot more attention. And, you know, I do have that, like, oh, I kind of liked it before it got popular, you know, feeling going on, but I don't disparage anyone for wanting to play that game now. Maybe they were younger. I definitely had my nephew Daniel. We tried to get him into Psychonauts several years ago, saying, "Dude, you got to play this game." And I just think he wasn't really in the mood for it. I think he would appreciate it a little bit more now, a couple years later. Um, but man, I think it's just such a unique series. And I love saying that series now, Psychonauts the series, because it's not just a one-off game that never got the recognition it deserved. I think it's finally getting the recognition it really does deserve as not only a unique game, not only a 3D platformer, but also a funny game, a really funny game. We laughed out loud so many times. And when does that happen with a game? You know, you get some tongue-in-cheek referencey type of stuff where you kind of giggle, but you don't get genuinely funny comedic moments out of games where they are written well. And I think Tim Schafer is a excellent comedy writer. You know, if you go back to the games that he worked on, like Maniac Mansion, Secret of Monkey Island, um, Double Fine Adventure is one of the newer ones. Brutal Legend, holy crap, come on. Brutal Legend is a hilarious game, and it has Jack Black. And what's really cool is Jack Black is now a friend of Tim Schafer. They're buddies because Jack Black has shown up in several Double Fine games. He showed up in Brutal Legend, and then he showed up in Double Fine Adventure, and now he's in Psychonauts 2. I'm not going to give away his voice performance, but I mean, obviously, anyone who's watched a Microsoft press conference knows that he's in that game. But I think he does a really excellent job as a voice actor as well. So I would say do yourself a favor and play Psychonauts 1 if you do enjoy it, which I think you will. I think if you listen to this podcast, if you're a friend of mine or anything like that, you know if you're a friend of mine, you probably have a very similar type of humor, at least, or at least know me and know my humor style. I think everyone can dig Psychonauts. So play Psychonauts 1. If you dig that, play Psychonauts 2. And if you're really into the series, I would say if you have a VR headset, obviously check out Psychonauts Rhombus of Ruin or the VR version. But if you don't, but you really like Psychonauts, watch a playthrough on YouTube of Rhombus of Ruin, because it's totally worth it. It is a shame that more people are going to miss some of the little things, because that game is an in-between game. It is definitely a 1.5 where you will miss a lot of stuff that they don't explain. But at the very beginning, because the game has been so long, they do have kind of a quick refresher intro, like cinematic, which is really nice. I want to talk more about Psychonauts 2, but I'm going to save that for Game of the Year, because I want to sit and dwell on it. We finished 100% last night, and got all the achievements and everything like that. And it only took, I think at the end, with definitely scrounging around a couple hours, it was 27 hours to complete the game 100%. That's nothing compared to how much hours most people put into a shooter like Call of Duty or an JRPG. So I would highly, 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 highly recommend Psychonauts 2. Wait for the Game of the Year podcast, because I'll definitely dive more into it. All right, so talked about 12 minutes, talked about Psychonauts 2. One thing that I'm excited about today is a game that because it is my birthday, it's going to be my birthday present to myself. The new WarioWare game is coming out for the Switch, and I'm super excited about that. Now, I did play the demo that came out a few weeks ago on the Switch. So they released a demo, and I played it, and I was not super excited about it. I think it's a good WarioWare game, but WarioWare games are those palate cleanser games to me. They're the quick in-betweens to kind of just get something new into my system. I just spent 27 hours playing a 3D platformer. A couple days before that, or a couple weeks before that, I spent several hours, 7 hours playing that 12 minutes time loop, top-down point and click game. So WarioWare is kind of just a quick refresher, just like a spritz of something new. So I'm super excited to play that today. I don't think it's going to be an amazing game. It'll probably be in my top 10, because there's so little top 10, or there's so little games coming out this year that are this year. And I was debating and going back and forth between, should I finally just bite the bullet and do games that I've been playing? Because I've been seeing people starting to put together their top 10 lists and saying, oh, I played God of War 2018 this year, and I really enjoyed it, so that's my top game of this year. It's like, I don't like the way that sounds. That doesn't look good. I want games that were released this year. And there's enough of them for me to be able to put a top 10 list, but not a whole lot. Years past, there's definitely been times where I wanted to do a top 20. But there's just not a whole lot coming out that's interesting to me. There are definitely games coming out every year or every day this year, but not a lot that are interesting to me. And I do have a pretty eclectic and pretty broad view of games, and will play pretty much everything, but it is short this year. So I am very excited to play WarioWare today. That's going to be my little birthday present to myself. And I'll probably talk a little bit about that on the next podcast, but that's going to do it for me for today. This has been Ryan Moore. Thank you very much for listening. It is my birthday, so this podcast is for me, and thank you very much for listening. You can go check out my review for Psychonauts 2, also 12 minutes, and a bunch of other stuff on my website. It's gameordie.net. Simple, easy to remember, gameordie.net. I just post stuff there whenever I have the time. I've been pretty busy. We actually went to a dog show in Georgia this last weekend for Labor Day weekend. So we were there for 4 days. So that was pretty tough, not being able to play Psychonauts for 4 days. But That's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for listening. I'll catch you next time.
I was walking down the street on a sunny day. Hubba, 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 hubba. A feeling in my bones says I have my way. Hubba, 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 hubba. Oh, I'm a happy boy. Oh, I'm a happy boy. Oh, ain't it good when things are going your way? Hey, hey. My little dog Spot got hit by a car. Hubba, 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 hubba. Put his guts in a box and put him in a drawer. Hubba, 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 hubba. Oh, I'm a happy boy. Oh, I'm a happy boy. Oh, ain't it good when things are going your way? Hey, hey. I forgot all about it for a month and a half. Hubba, 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 hubba. I looked in the drawer and started to laugh. Hubba, 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 hubba. 'Cause I'm a happy boy. Oh, I'm a happy boy. Oh, ain't it good when things are going your way? Hey, hey.